I never expected a millionaire to humiliate me. Until my piano talent left him speechless. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the stage in the community center. I paced back and forth, my heart racing, palms clammy. This was my chance to shine, my moment to break free. Strumming my fingers across the keys, I looked out into a sea of unfamiliar faces. The applause pulsed in my chest like a heartbeat, but it easily morphed into suffocating pressure. I spotted him in the front row, the millionaire. Dressed in a crisp suit, his watch gleamed like a trophy. Everyone whispered about his riches, about how he owned half the city. I was just a broke girl from the suburbs, a nobody who played the piano in her living room dreaming for more. Yet, on that stage, I felt electric. Every note I played carried my hopes, my dreams, and my pain weaving through the air. Each crescendo filled the room, drawing gasps. I could feel it, an audience hanging on the edge of breath, but I also sensed his mocking gaze. My fingers trembled as I wrapped them around the keys. Everything was happening so fast. Suddenly, like a punch to the gut, his laughter rang out sharp, cutting. It echoed, drowning my melody. "What a waste of talent," he sneered, his voice slicing through my music like a knife. The room fell silent. My heart dropped. The confidence I had built crumbled. I felt ice boring into my soul, questions swirling. Would I even finish? Could I even breathe? Heat crept up my cheeks. Every cheeky giggle, every whisper, it all resonated like a storm brewing inside me. My fingers stilled on the keys. Was this really happening? I could see the shock on familiar faces turning into pity. The laughter blended with snickers. Me friends, my family disheartened. I thought about the hours of practice, the moments of solitude, the sacrifices closed around me like a vice. It all felt pointless now, yet a spark ignited inside. I refused to give in. So with trembling hands, I struck the keys again. This time, raw emotion flowed through me. I played my heart out, pushing through the agony of humiliation. It was now or never, and somehow, I knew I had to make him feel what I was feeling. The music exploded, filling the room with a haunting beauty. I was ripping apart the silence, drowning out his cruelty. But as the last note lingered in the air, I saw his expression shift from smugness to shock. The audience was frozen. In that moment, did I just see fear flicker in his eyes? I breathed hard, my heart racing but filled with something else. Determination? No, vengeance? I didn't want him to just hear me, I wanted him to remember this moment forever. What would he say next? Would the millionaire admit defeat? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The lingering notes of the piano faded into a profound silence that filled the room, yet the tension only escalated. I could feel the weight of 100 mixed emotions surging through the audience, their admiration wrapped in disbelief, their encouragement tinged with pity. I took a deep breath, trying to fight the wave of vulnerability threatening to crash over me, but the microphone was still clutched tightly in one hand, waiting for his response. The millionaire remained seated, his expression shifting from shock to an inscrutable facade. My heart raced, navigating the tightly wound string of hope and misery woven into each beat. Would he retaliate, or would he finally understand the depth of my music? As the murmurs began to swirl back into the atmosphere, a soft clap broke through the clamor, hesitant at first, then growing more resolute. It was my mother, her face radiant, tears mingling with pride. Slowly, others joined, the sound turning into a gentle wave of support that enveloped me. Yet, amidst this unexpected kindness, the man in the tailored suit remained unmoved, his gaze piercing as if he were lost in a labyrinth of his thoughts. Then he stood, drawing every eye in the room. The applause grew quiet, each clap breaking into pieces as they awaited his words. "Remarkable," he said, his voice a mix of admiration and something colder that rippled beneath the surface. "Too bad it's all wasted on a talent such as this." His smile returned, a smirk cracking his otherwise composed exterior. The audience gasped collectively, the air thick with discomfort. A fire ignited within me. How dare he belittle what I had just shown? My music wasn't a frivolous pastime, it was the very essence of my being. As I stood there, the bitterness of his words stung, deepening the chasm of conflict within. Yet, something glimmered in the ashes. The challenge ignited the fighter inside me. As the evening wore on, the performance space gradually emptied, leaving behind echoes of laughter and heartbeats. The crowd thinned until only a handful remained, scooped up in conversations filled with disbelief. My friends approached with encouraging smiles, but I could hardly bring myself to meet their eyes, my own heart echoing the mysterious melody of empowerment and despair thumping in my chest. "Don't listen to him, Sarah. You played beautifully," Anna, my closest friend, whispered, wrapping her arms around my shoulders. "Yeah, he's just a bitter rich kid who doesn't know art if it bit him," chuckled Josh, an arm slung casually over my shoulder, his warmth simmering in the cold aftermath. But as they comforted me, I caught sight of the millionaire slipping out the back door like a wraith, his silhouette barely a shadow against the dim light. A sudden sharp pang of determination shot through me. I needed to understand him, to unravel the enigma behind his cruelty. Who was he, really, beneath the polished facade? As I stepped outside, the night air caressed my skin, rich with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. I walked aimlessly, each step weighted with questions. Just as I turned a corner, my eyes fell upon him standing by a black Mercedes, his body rigid, fingers tapping anxiously against the hood. "Why?" I blurted out, surprising myself with the intensity of my own emotion. "Why do you even care to insult me?" He turned sharply, his eyes narrowing, but there was a flicker of something human, a flickering candle in a darkened room. For a brief moment, vulnerability cracked his facade. "You don't get it," he said, his voice low but loud enough to resonate in the surrounding silence. "I didn't mean to humiliate you. You reminded me of someone I lost. Someone who had potential, a different kind of talent." My heart clenched, his words were a puzzle piece slipping into place. The scars crisscrossing the edges of my own life reflected in his. "Is that why you felt the need to bring me down?" I countered. "To drag someone else down with you." He looked away, shame etching the lines on his face, but the flicker in his eyes remained, a glimmer of a shared pain that tied us together. However, momentarily. Just as I was about to ask more, his expression hardened again. "This isn't your stage. It never was. Stay away from me." As he stepped into his car, the door closing with a finality that left me breathless, I could hardly comprehend the storm brewing within me. How could a moment of connection spiral into another layer of heartbreak? I stood in the darkness, echoing the silent cries of my music, the world around me fading as I wrestled with the feelings sparking inside. I was left at a crossroads, caught between vengeance and understanding, but I knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over. I needed to explore why he stirred those buried feelings, embracing my pain, and harnessing it into strength. But in that moment of vulnerability, the weight of his last words clawed at my insides. Was I ready for the reckoning that awaited? The chill of the night embraced me as I stood alone by the shadow of the street lamp, a soft glow illuminating the confusion written across my face. The warmth of my friend's words faded, leaving behind a bitter aftertaste as I replayed every moment with the millionaire, the way his look shifted from disdain to a flicker of sympathy before hardening again. It was a dance of vulnerability and defense, but the echoes of his final words haunted me. Taking a deep breath, I managed to tear myself away from the car's fading light. Each step felt like a shuffle through uncertainty. I found my way to a nearby park, the silence cracked only by the occasional rustle of leaves. I needed to think, to make sense of the muddled emotions swelling within me. Sitting atop a cold wooden bench, I pulled my phone from my pocket and searched for any information about the man who had unraveled something deep within me. His name, Oliver Jameson, flickered across the screen. Success stories mingled with bitter controversies that painted him in shades of disdain and envy. But something tugged at me. He was not just a scion of wealth and judgments, he was a person rounded by loss, a soul battling inner demons. A soft whistle pulled my attention up just as a couple of children raced by, laughing, their joy cutting through the dark clouds that loomed over me. Among the laughter, a little girl, no older than 7, hopped off the swing and turned to wave at me before slipping back with her friends. That moment, so pure and innocent, filled the space where I felt hollow. Perhaps not every connection had to be fraught with pain, there was hope, too. Just as I settled into that flicker of warmth, my phone buzzed a message from Anna. "Are you okay?" "We're at Layla's. She's worried about you." The kindness of my friends grounded me again. I messaged back a simple, "Coming." But part of me lingered, thinking of the duality of the fragile human experience that seemed tangled in unexpected ways. I walked home, my thoughts weaving between the warmth of friendship and the chill of Oliver's disdain. Each street I passed carried the weight of memory as my family, my childhood, my dreams, and, now, the shadows of unrecognizable faces. What if I could use my music to transcend the pain? What if, through my art, I could bridge the gap between us both? Upon reaching my apartment, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the warmth of familiarity met me at the door. Layla stood there, her eyes clouded with worry. "Sarah," she said in a gentle voice, pulling me into a hug. "What happened? You were incredible tonight, you know that, right?" "I know," I said, feeling a bittersweet smile cross my lips. But Oliver, I paused, not wanting to burden her with the weight of the complexities I felt. "Let's just say I didn't expect such a reaction from someone so privileged as a fool." Layla sighed, her brow furrowing. "I'd hate to see someone so talented focus on the likes of him. Come eat. Food is the best medicine." As we gathered around the table, surrounded by laughter and plates of spaghetti, the ambience seemed to dull the sharp edges of my day. But beneath the surface, the flutters of uncertainty continued to rattle in my chest. I still needed answers, especially about Oliver. After dinner, I sat on the small balcony, peering into the darkness punctuated by shimmers of city lights. That's when I noticed my phone buzzing again. Another message, this one from an unknown number. My pulse quickened as I opened it. "I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe we need to talk." "Oh." A rush of exhilaration laced with anxiety exploded within me. What could this mean? Was he reaching out to taunt me again, or was it an invitation to unravel the complexities intertwining our lives? A million thoughts raced through my mind, but beneath the uncertainty, a river of hope flowed, bathing my worries in warmth. Just as I took a moment to breathe deeply, letting the possibility wash over me, the faint sound of a piano drifted through the air from a nearby apartment, lilting and soulful. I closed my eyes, letting the notes cradle me, instinctually knowing that I had a choice to make. If I were to confront Oliver again, it would have to be with the strength of my music as my shield, but also as a bridge to understanding the man behind the facade. As I steeled myself for whatever lay ahead, a new wave of determination built within me. I couldn't allow his initial words to define me. Instead, I would harness them, transforming hurt into the melody of my journey. I would seek clear answers, and perhaps together we could weave something beautiful out of our shared darkness. But staring into the abyss of uncertainty, I couldn't shake the weight of fear of what our encounter might reveal. Just then, my phone buzzed again, an alert. A notification that shattered my thoughts, and my heart plummeted as I read the headline, "Oliver Jameson found unconscious after mystery accident." The world spun around me as I clutched my phone with trembling fingers. The glowing screen illuminated not just the headline but also a shadow of dread that clung to my thoughts like a heavy fog. Unconscious? An accident? As anxiety surged within me, I felt my heart race, each beat echoing disbelief and a growing sense of urgency. I hurriedly tapped the article, scrolling through details that blurred together. No known cause, the scene ominously shrouded in mystery. How could this happen? How could a man so filled with bravado and undeniable strength suddenly be rendered vulnerable? The very notion felt like a poetic twist, yet my emotions clashed violently. If anything, it siphoned away the fragile hope I'd clung to moments before. With palms clammy against the cool device, I pushed myself back from the couch, the weight of impending decision pressing heavily upon me. Should I go? How could I even think to step into his world now, amidst this chaos? But there, tucked quietly in the recesses of my heart, a flicker of something deeper concern ignited. This was a man I barely knew, yet he was the orchestrator of emotions that swirled within me like an unyielding tempest. "Sarah? You all right?" Layla called from inside the warm kitchen, her voice laced with care that instantly drew me back into reality. "Yeah, just a new headline about Oliver," I muttered, barely able to form the words, as darkness crept into my mind, eclipsing the warmth of friendship that had surrounded me only minutes before. "Is he in trouble?" she asked, stepping onto the balcony with a concerned expression. A subtle nod was all I could muster, and in her eyes, I saw a glimpse of my internal conflict mirrored. With the weight of humanity falling heavily on my shoulders, I felt raw in the face of such uncertainty, scrutinizing whether my emotions toward him were rooted in pity or understanding. "Maybe you should reach out," Layla suggested softly. "He might need someone to talk to even if he didn't handle things well before." But the words made the knot in my stomach tighten. Could I be there for him after he had been so cruel, so dismissive of my worth? "You can always hold on to the past," she added, her voice steady and filled with assurance. Her words draped over me like a comforting cloak, and I realized she was right. Perhaps it was time to confront the complexities of my feelings, not just for him but for myself. I wanted to feel free, unshackled by the fear of rejection or judgment. Maybe through my music, through my willingness to be vulnerable, I could see past his facade and mine. "Okay, you're right." I took a deep breath. "He'll go to the hospital. I need to know if he's okay. And maybe, hopefully, we can really talk." Layla nodded, a warm smile spreading across her face, understanding the monumental step I was about to take, fueled by both trepidation and faith. "He'll come with you." Her presence soothed my racing thoughts as we drove through the night, the city lights blurring into an interminable stream of color and sound. Yet every moment felt charged, heavy with anticipation, as if I was stepping into an uncharted territory where compassion mingled with confrontation. Once at the hospital, the sterile, fluorescent light seemed painfully harsh against the frantic thrum of my heart. I felt easily overwhelmed, but Layla's supportive hand found mine, grounding me as we approached the front desk. I could barely hear the nurse's voice as she inquired about my relationship to the patient. "Oliver Jameson, just a friend," I whispered, the words tasting foreign as they left my lips. I barely recognized that version of myself. I wasn't sure what kind of friend I would emerge as after this moment. We were directed to a waiting room where his familiar group of tightly wound figures, each cloaked in worry, sat hunched against one another. I felt like an intruder. Their tense whispers hung in the air, forming an unbreakable barrier between their grief and my own uncertainty. I hesitated, ready to melt into the shadows, but Layla squeezed my hand. "You came for him," she urged, her voice ringing with conviction. "You can't back down now." Taking a steadying breath, I stepped forward into the fray, my heart racing with each passing moment. As I approached, they turned to look at me, eyes betraying their exhaustion, the urgency of their desperation palpable. Is he going to be okay?" I managed to ask, my voice soft yet steeped in concern. One of his siblings, a tall man with furrowed brows, regarded me with a mixture of skepticism and gratitude. "We're waiting for updates," he replied. "He got hurt pretty bad, a concussion and some broken ribs. We don't know much yet." The weight of uncertainty crashed over me again, an unbearable pressure on my chest as I thought of him laid out there, vulnerable and weak, a contrast to the proud man I had faced earlier. Can we see him?" Layla piped up, tearing through the silence, her determination providing strength to my wavering resolve. Just then, the doctor walked in, his expression somber but steady. "Who's here for Oliver Jameson?" he asked, scanning the room. I answered, almost instinctively. "I'm a friend." The word felt heavier on my tongue than before, carrying a weight full of untold stories and insecurities. The doctor nodded. "We're stabilizing him now. He's unconscious, but you may speak with him for a few moments. This way." He led us to a small room, sterile and muted, free of the vibrant chaos outside. There lay Oliver, connected to machines, a pallor painting his once charismatic face. My heart sank, and it took everything in me to breathe as I approached his bedside. Seeing him there, so fragile, ignited a storm of emotions, conflicts, questions, hopes, and fears. "What am I doing here?" I whispered, feeling completely out of place yet drawn to his vulnerability. As I looked at him, a wave of uncertainty washed over me. Yet among the swirling chaos of emotions within me, one notion surged with clarity. I had stepped into this moment for a reason. If I could not untangle his past, perhaps together we could find a way to heal between us, even if it was in silence. Just then, as if responding to my fervent plea, I felt his fingers twitch gently against the sheets. I froze, my breath caught in my throat, as uncertainty transformed into an anxious thrill. What if this was the spark that might finally bind us together? Or was it merely the beginnings of a far more complicated journey? Then unexpectedly, his eyelids fluttered, and the room suddenly felt small as I stood on the precipice of an unknowable future. The beeping machines around me transformed into a symphony of uncertainty and fear. I barely noticed the coldness of the room or the dim lights overhead. All my attention was anchored on Oliver's face. It was a visage I had grown to appreciate not only for its charm but also for the fire behind his blue eyes, a fire that now smoldered beneath a fragile surface. His fingers twitched again, a dance of life that pulled me deeper into my own storm of emotions. The veil of his strength fell away, revealing the man beneath all the bravado. Suddenly, I wanted to brush back the pain and fear surrounding us, to tell him that it was okay to be vulnerable, that he didn't always have to be the strong one. Oliver, I murmured, feelings spilling over like a broken dam. I squeezed his hand lightly, remembering how his grip had once filled me with confidence, how his laughter had echoed promises of warmth. Please come back to us. Layla stood just behind me, a steady support, her presence forming a protective barrier between our raw vulnerability and the chaos lingering in this sterile room. I could sense her empathy, her unwavering belief in the possibility of healing not just for him, but for me. As if sensing my turmoil, the doctor returned, his expression grim yet encouraging. He may awaken soon, he said gently, nodding encouragingly. Just speak to him. Sometimes, hearing familiar voices can help. With my heart racing and emotions crashing like waves, I leaned closer to Oliver's side, my breath catching again as I caught a flicker of movement in his eyelids. The rhythm of his heart inside the artificial confines of the monitors thudded louder, matching my own growing anticipation and fear. Oliver, I continued, my voice barely above a whisper. I came here because I care. We've had our moments, our misunderstandings. But I need you to know that you're not alone in this. A heartbeat passed, heavy with unspoken words. I had hoped he might hear me, that some part of him could understand the urgency shaping this moment. Then, a soft groan escaped his lips, an unintentional sound that reverberated in the charged air. My heart leapt. He was fighting to come back, fighting through the dark haze of uncertainty. I reached for his hand again, feeling the warmth of his skin, and hoped my touch would anchor him to this moment. To me, Oliver, please, I pressed on, my heart echoing louder than the clinical beeping around us. You can do this. You've faced so much more. Just take your time. We're all here for you. Layla silently squeezed my shoulder, silently urging me to continue. I felt her strength wrap around my growing doubts, and I drew from it, finding a spare flicker of courage to keep going. You've inspired so many, even when you didn't realize it. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours. Suddenly, his brow furrowed, and those captivating blue eyes blinked open, albeit slowly, as if dragging themselves from a deep abyss. The weariness etched in his features stirred a wave of fear and uncertainty within me. Where he croaked, his voice barely audible, like the rustling of fallen leaves. The flicker in his gaze caught mine, a moment suspended in uncertainty. I felt my heart leap into my throat. His confusion mirrored back at me, and I was struck with the sudden realization that this was not just an accident. It was a pivotal moment that rippled through the fabric of our connection. You're in the hospital, I replied softly, my voice trembling with the weight of everything unspoken. You had an accident, but you're awake now. Just breathe. He blinked several times, processing my words. Then, as if the fog began to lift from his mind, I watched recognition flood his features, followed by the hint of a wry smile, a ghost of his usual charm still flickering beneath obscured layers. Sarah? He whispered, voice hoarse as he tried to sit up, and instinctively, I moved closer ready to support him, ready to be there. I didn't think. Don't try to move too much, I interjected, my heart breaking anew as I noticed the myriad of tubes and connections mapping his body, a stark visual reminder of his fragility. His gaze softened, and for a moment, I saw through the cracks of his bravado. I didn't think you would care. Those words struck deep within me. The wounds between us were far from healed, and yet, suddenly, the air shimmered with potential, laden with something unnameable that began to weave our stories together again. As I tightened my grip on his hand, a sudden realization crashed over me. My world was pivoting. I felt it all. The kind of connection that dared to live beneath the hurt and misunderstanding, a connection that could span beyond this, beyond the vulnerability laid bare in this sterile room. But before I could respond, a figure rushed into the room, his mother, her expression a hurricane of relief and fear. She enveloped Oliver in a protective embrace, tears pouring down her cheeks as she held him close. I caught a glimpse of fierce love intermingled with desperation, an emotion so raw, so powerful that it made me step back, a witness to the moment. Suddenly, the room felt smaller again, the air thickening with a shared vulnerability I didn't know how to navigate. I stood there, suspended between the life I thought I'd known and this new version of Oliver, who might never be the same again. "Sarah," he called out weakly, his eyes searching for mine amidst the whirlwind of family. I didn't know if he had more to say, but the uncertainty loomed heavily in the room, pressing against us as I felt hearts and hopes intermingled in a delicate balance. And yet, with hope flickering alongside fear, I realized I wouldn't leave. I would remain steadfast, ready to face whatever this journey would throw at us, past and future colliding at an intersection fraught with questions. As the doctor entered again, my gaze steadied on Oliver's face, my breath caught in my throat. "I'm here," I mouthed silently, uncertain of what lay ahead, yet undeniably drawn to the challenge that awaited us both. The sterile walls of the hospital room began to feel like a cage, enclosing emotions that fluttered wildly within me. Oliver's mother, still trembling with relief, leaned back slightly to allow me into their moment. I didn't want to intrude, but something deeper pulled me toward him, a tether born of shared moments and unspoken feelings that had lingered beneath the surface. "Sarah," Oliver began, but the words hung in the air, a fragile whisper burdened by the weight of uncertainty. Just rest," I urged, my heart clenching painfully as I noticed the sharp contrast between his vulnerability and the strength he had always radiated. I could sense his mother nearby, radiating warmth and love, yet casting a shadow of fear that threatened to engulf him again. Within the union of their embrace, I felt like an outsider, a flicker of doubt creeping in. I couldn't deny that their shared history was more profound than ours. Oliver's mother murmured sweet reassurances, each word a balm against the raw edges of fear. The way she brushed back his hair, the way her hands clutched his, made me question whether I could possibly hold the same space in his heart. "I'm here," I whispered again, softly reaching out for his hand, desperate that he knew I would not vanish into the ether of history. The warmth of his fingers shot through me, igniting memories of laughter, late-night drives, and quiet moments that resonated far deeper than the superficiality that often marred our lives. Oliver's gaze flicked between his mother and me, a storm of emotions clouding his blue eyes. "I didn't think you'd still care," he rasped, and the unspoken weight of those words broke something open within me. But before I could respond with the reassurance I desperately wanted to offer, the doctor's voice cut through the heated tension, unveiling a palpable reality that none of us could escape. "Oliver, we need to conduct further tests," he stated with a professional composure that felt slightly jarring in the emotional whirlwind surrounding us. "It's important to assess any damage and formulate a plan." As he spoke, I sensed the shift in the room's energy. Oliver's enthusiasm dimmed, and I could see fear pierce his expressions like icy daggers. It was a fear I recognized. What if he was changed forever? What if he could never return to the ambitious, carefree spirit I once knew? "He'll be right here," I promised, leaning in closer. My heart ached for him, for what he stood to lose. "You will get through this." I wanted to believe my words, but the uncertainty danced around us like ghosts from the past, taunting us with memories of happier times. Oliver nodded faintly, but the flicker in his eyes told a different story, one filled with doubt and insecurity surfacing through the cracks of his bravado. I wanted so desperately to shield him from that pain, to be the anchor in this storm. But fear wrapped around my heart, whispering doubts about my place in his resurrected world. Once the doctor left, I felt an unsettling silence settle over us. I exchanged long glances with Oliver's mother, both of us momentarily caught in our own worries, unsure of how to navigate this tumultuous chapter. Then her gaze turned contemplative, as if weighing her words carefully before she spoke again. "Sarah, thank you for being here," she said, her voice steady yet laced with vulnerability. "I know it's not easy." I offered her a nod, trying to convey that I wanted to be there for both of them, though conflict stirred inside me. The bond they shared was undeniable, and despite my growing connection to Oliver, I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in what should be a sacred space. "His spirit is strong," she continued, sensing my inner turmoil. "But I know he needs all the support he can get. Maybe you could help him remember who he was before everything." A flutter of hope ignited inside me at her words, yet the shadows of doubt that accompanied it felt suffocating. I wanted to help, but what if Oliver didn't want to remember? The possibility of returning to normal was one path, while the road toward an uncertain future lay open and daunting. Just then, Oliver jerked his head slightly, drawing our attention back to his fading presence. "What if I can't be that person again?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion, each word a stitch in the fabric of his vulnerability. "What if you will find your way?" his mother replied quickly, reaching to hold his hand tighter. "We will figure it out, together." Behind her conviction, I saw an unmistakable flicker of fear, too. The weight of uncertainty settled upon us like a dense fog, controlling the rhythm of our breaths. I had never witnessed a fracture so profound in someone I cared for, and I was terrified of the potential dimensions it could take. As minutes bled into each other, I tried to breathe through the emotions, focusing on remembering the moments that made Oliver who he was. Those shared experiences became lifelines amid swirling waves of doubt. I watched him closely, felt the weight of his struggle and knew I could not turn away now. But even as we began to tentatively reach out to one another in whispers and touches, in a longing for long-lost moments of connection, a hollow dread threaded through the room. A soft knock brought my attention to the door, where a nurse stood, her gaze shifting between us and the chart she was holding. "Excuse me, Oliver," she interjected gently, "we need to take some vital signs. Are you ready?" As the nurse approached, pulling away the careful armor of familial love, I sensed a flicker of fear cross Oliver's face. His eyes darted to mine, searching for reassurance. I wanted to extend my hand and promise him that everything would be okay, but my breath caught in my throat as I felt a deep reality wash over us. Nothing would ever be the same again. As the nurse prepared to take his vitals, the room filled with the grey cloud of uncertainty and potential loss. I leaned closer, whispering a soft pledge of loyalty into the storm. But just as the measuring devices began to beep and the air thickened with expectation, a chilling thought gripped me. What if this was only the beginning of something far darker than any of us imagined? The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, a relentless reminder of the sterile environment we inhabited. I forced myself to focus on Oliver's face, trying to draw any warmth I could from his expression. His once bright blue eyes now held shadows, and I could feel the weight of every unanswered question lingering between us, an oppressive fog in the air. As the nurse motioned for him to sit up, Oliver winced slightly, as if each movement was a reminder of everything he had lost. "I can do this," he muttered, his hands gripping the sheets as though they were the only things anchoring him against the tide of fear and uncertainty. I could see the tremors in his hands, and my heart ached to reach out and assure him. "Look at me," I urged, leaning closer, willing my voice to be steady. "You are stronger than this moment. Remember that time we stayed up all night talking about our dreams? You wanted to change the world, and I believed you could." His gaze darted past me, lost in a swirl of despair. In that instant, it felt as though the very fabric of our connection was fraying, threads unraveling into the painful reality we now faced. He swallowed hard, his throat working against the emotions trapped inside him. "What if those dreams are gone now? What if I can't even play my piano anymore?" The sorrow in his voice struck me like 1,000 shards of glass, each piece a reminder of how fragile life could be. The nurse, sensing the emotional stalemate, gently placed her hand on Oliver's shoulder. "It's okay to feel afraid, but we're here to help you," she said, her tone soothing but firm. "Let's see how your body is handling this. With time, we might even explore ways to reconnect you with your music. It's not about being the same as you were, it's about finding a new way to express who you are now." In that moment, her unexpected kindness ignited a flicker of hope within me, a reminder that healing wasn't always about returning to the past, sometimes it was about building anew. But as much as I wanted to echo her confidence, I feared the truth. What if this was just a facade? As the nurse took his vitals, our eyes remained locked. I could see his vulnerability mirrored in my own uncertainty. "You don't have to pretend with me," I whispered, pleading with him to let down his guard. "If you're scared, just tell me." Him not going anywhere for a moment, there was silence. The beeping machines created a rhythm that felt intimate as we navigated our unsaid fears together. Oliver's mouth opened, as if he were about to allow the torrent of emotions to spill forth, but just then, a familiar voice broke through the walls of our sanctuary. "Oliver, darling." The shrill, slightly overbearing tone of his aunt, the wealthy benefactor from his childhood, cut through the intimacy we were cultivating. She swept into the room with the confident authority of someone used to being listened to, her designer heels echoing like tiny warning bells. "I just heard what happened. You shouldn't be alone in here. Look at you." The life seemed to drain from the space as she sidled up to Oliver's bedside, a misplaced warmth reflected in her perfectly manicured smile. She placed her hands on his arm, stroking gently yet without understanding the gravity of what he was experiencing. "You need to start putting your life back together. I've arranged for therapy private session so you can return to normal soon. One call, and I'll have everything organized." "This isn't just about getting back to normal," Oliver replied, his voice strained but resolute. I held my breath, praying he would stand his ground against the tidal wave of expectation she brought with her. "I need time to process everything." Time is expensive," she countered, not realizing the insensitivity of her words. "You have to think about how this will reflect on the family name. My dear boy, you don't want to be an embarrassment, do you?" The weight of her words crashed down around us, and Oliver flinched. I could see the unspoken war raging within him, the battle between wanting to please his family and the need to carve out his own identity. My own heart sank at the realization that even in his moment of vulnerability, the expectations of those around him loomed large. Just as effectively as she had entered, she began to navigate back to what was evidently her throne outside the world of hospitals. "I'll be in touch. You need to focus on recovery. No distractions." With that curt reminder, she turned to leave, glancing at me with a barely concealed look of disdain, as if I were somehow the mindless distraction gripping Oliver's attention. In her wake, the silence felt heavier. I turned back to Oliver, desperate to bridge the distance that had begun to grow between us again. "Forget what she said. This isn't about what others think, it's about you, Oliver." His gaze was lost somewhere in the distance, shadows flitting across his face as he wrestled with the internal struggle. After a moment, he finally spoke, but with each word, the thread of connection that had been stitched together began to fray again. "Sarah, I don't know how to hold on to myself. What if I'm not who I used to be?" Tears threatened to spill as I fought the urge to reach for him, knowing that my presence wasn't enough to mend the deep fissures opening in his soul. Just as I was about to reply, the room's door burst open again, revealing another nurse, her face drawn and serious. "I am sorry to interrupt, but we need to transfer Oliver for a scan," she said. Before I could voice my protest, she had stepped forward, preparing the necessary equipment. "Don't worry. He'll be waiting," I promised, thick with emotion, my heart aching for the uncertainty pressing heavily on his shoulders. But as the nurse pushed the gurney closer, something shifted in Oliver's expression. A flicker of panic crossed his features that told me he wasn't merely concerned about the test. Then it happened. In the frantic hustle, just before they wheeled him away, Oliver's breath caught in his throat, his gaze locking on the gurney's edge. "Wait! I need to tell you something, Sarah," he called out, desperation weaving through his words. The urgency pulsed through the room as time seemed to suspend on that very heartbeat, and my heart raced in tune with his. "What?" I replied, wanting nothing more than for him to share whatever storm brewed within. But before he could respond, they ushered him away into the corridor, leaving me standing in the stark white room filled with the echo of unanswered questions. The sound of his voice lingered in the air, hanging over me like a cloud, and fear crept in. A deeper uncertainty bloomed in my chest. What had he wanted to say? As the doors swung closed behind them, I was left alone, feeling the emptiness radiate around me. And as shadows deepened in the corners of the room, an unsettling truth took root. perhaps we were staring into an abyss that was far more consuming than we could ever imagine, with the potential for darkness intertwined with the hope for healing. Would I be strong enough to face it with him? The corridor felt interminable as I paced, the sterile walls closing in around me. I could still hear Oliver's voice echoing in my mind, the desperation, the fear. What was it he needed to tell me? The air was thick with unanswered questions, and the rhythmic beeping of the machines hadn't quieted from my thoughts. Moments passed like hours. Each footfall echoed with increasing heaviness in my heart, as uncertainty gnawed at my insides. The sudden flash of Oliver's face haunted my thoughts. His anguish was palpable. I ducked into a waiting area, the low hum of hushed conversations buzzing in my ears. I sat down and waited, the starkness of the surroundings sharpening all my senses. Was I brave enough to keep hoping for him when it felt as though the world conspired against us? Shoulders slumping, I leaned back and closed my eyes, wishing I could transport myself to the nights we had spent jazzing through melodies like they were our lifelines, forgetting the world beyond. Just then, a shadow fell across me, and I opened my eyes to see a nurse standing by. Her name tag read Maya, and the concern etched on her face offered a glimmer of warmth in the cold room. "Hey, I just wanted to check in." "Are you all right?" "Not really," I confessed, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "I'm just worried about Oliver." "He looked so scared," Maya nodded empathetically. "That's completely understandable. What he's going through is not easy. But I want you to know he is tougher than he realizes. There's a fire in him that can't be extinguished so easily." Her words ignited a small flame within me, and despite the pervasive heaviness that blanketed the hospital, I allowed myself a fleeting sense of hope. "Do you really think so? Trust me," she said, smiling softly. "He has a lot of support people who believe in him. You being here makes a difference. Sometimes, that's all someone needs to have, a familiar face, a hand to hold. You can be a lifeline." As I sat with her words, I felt a choice forming before me, to be the strength he needed or succumb to my own fears. "What if that isn't enough?" I asked, the doubt creeping back in. "What if he never finds his way back?" Maya rested her hand on my shoulder, grounding me momentarily. "You have to let him find his own path. Recovery isn't linear. It's messy and unpredictable. But the love you share can help pave the way. Just remind him he's not alone." Tears threatened to spill once more, stirring memories of laughter, of music, of the dreams that seemed so unattainable now. "I just want him to be okay," I whispered, half to myself, half to Maya, who nodded knowingly. Suddenly, commotion broke the moment as gurneys wheeled by, and I turned my head to see doctors huddled at the far end of the hallway, their hurried voices wrapped in urgency. My heart raced, something about the atmosphere felt charged with tension like the calm before a storm. "Excuse me," I said abruptly, getting up. "I need to check on Oliver." Maya's watchful expression made me stop as her eyes flickered with concern. "I don't think, please, I have to know he's okay," I interjected, not waiting for her response. As I hurried through the corridor, the noise grew louder, a symphony of beeping monitors and distant conversation swirling around me. Fear twisted my insides as I rounded the corner to the imaging department. The waiting room was crowded and chaotic, filled with anxious family members and doctors disappearing behind closed doors, and that's when I saw him, standing near the glass partition, looking pale and lost. "Oliver?" My heart soared and plummeted at the same time, realizing how small he looked in that moment. I stepped forward, but the nurse at the desk turned to face me. "You can't enter there right now. We are trying to perform the scan, please," I implored, desperation clawing at my throat. "I need to speak with him." Just then, I was graced with the unmistakable figure of Oliver's aunt, hurrying back toward us, a frantic look on her face. "What is going on?" she demanded of the staff, the authority in her voice both unsettling and cringeworthy. Before anyone could respond, something happened. A loud crash echoed through the hallway, drawing everyone's attention. I turned, breath hitching as the glass doors of the imaging room swung open. Oliver stumbled out, visibly shaken, his face drained of color. "Oliver!" I rushed toward him, my heart racing. "What's going on?" But before he could answer, something caught my eye. In the commotion, a worried doctor emerged from behind him, visibly agitated. "We need more time." We can't assess the situation without further tests. It's complicated. Before I could process the implications of his words, I saw Oliver's gaze shift over my shoulder. The relief in his eyes was palpable, but just as quickly, it turned to fear. I turned, following his line of sight, just as Oliver's aunt closed the distance between us. "What are you doing out here?" she snapped, her tone sharp enough to draw blood. "You need to be focusing on your recovery." But there was something deeper in Oliver's eyes as they darted back to me, something swimming beneath the surface, a silent battle he wasn't ready to voice. I felt the chasm between us widen. Before I could grasp what was happening, the words spilled from him, raw and unsettling. "Sarah, but the sound of another crash shattered the air, and I turned toward the commotion, now a flurry of doctors rushing down the hall, their faces set in grim determination. I felt a chill in my spine, as if something shifted in the air, dark and menacing, presaging a revelation I wasn't prepared to face. Behind me, I could hear his aunt's voice rising above the chaos. "This is unacceptable. My family doesn't do uncertainty." As the realization of Oliver's fragmented plea hung heavily in the air, a new dread washed over me. My heart raced, and I turned back to the doctors just as a shadow fell over the doorway. I couldn't shake the feeling that the answers we desperately sought, as fragile as they were, might soon slip through our fingers, forever. In that moment, I realized the truth. This was but the beginning of an uncharted journey, and with every heartbeat, we were getting closer to his ultimate revelation. Oliver's gaze bore into mine, the tumult in his eyes simmering beneath an ocean of confusion. As nurses rushed past us, ushering doctors to the source of the latest commotion, I felt our world tightening around its core, a world where the unspoken hung like thick fog. My heart thundered in the silence, a desperate wish lacing through my thoughts. Just tell me what you need to say. But was this the right moment? Would the chaos that engulfed us sap him of whatever resolve he needed to share? I glanced at Oliver's aunt, her fingers gripping his wrist with a ferocity that made me uncomfortable. She was a storm, and we were mere leaves caught in her wind. "Oliver," I murmured, shifting closer, desperate to create a bridge back to him amidst this tempest. "Please, I want to help. Just tell me what's going on. Are you okay?" He opened his mouth to respond, but before any words could form, his expression turned distant, haunted by shadows I couldn't see. In that instant, I sensed we were teetering on the edge of something crucial, something huge that could change everything. A low rumble echoed in the distance, followed by a sudden, overwhelming silence that ricocheted off the sterile walls. Doctors and nurses froze, as if waiting for the unfolding moment to reveal its truth. I followed their gaze to the doorway where a surgeon stood, brow furrowed, expression grave. "They're preparing the operating room," the surgeon stated, voice laced with urgency. "We need to act now." The announcement dissolved the tension in the air, morphing it into something palpable. My stomach dropped. The words hung over "use operating room," an implication laden with fear. I felt Oliver's body tense beside me as questions exploded in my mind, a cacophony of worry and doubt. What were they preparing for? What was about to happen? "Oliver," I said again, the name almost a plea now, my voice trembling with urgency. "What do they need to do? Please, tell me you're okay." "Tell me you're not Sarah," he interrupted, the strength of his voice surprising me amid the chaos. His eyes burned with intensity, as if he were grappling with the weight of the world. "I didn't want you to see me like this. What do you mean?" The question slipped out, raw and unguarded. "Look at me," he replied, a tremor lining his tone. "I'm not the person you think I am. This is beyond me. I should have told you earlier." Before he could finish, his words fractured in the noise of the bustling hospital, the weight of unspoken truths pressing us down. I searched his face, trying to discern the meaning beneath his fear, but the flicker of something dark unsettled my heart more than anything. "Oh, Oliver," his aunt interjected, her voice slicing through the moment. "You don't have to burden her with this. You'll get through it without dragging her down. Let's focus on healing, shall we? Keep your head up." There it was again, that bind of familial love and pressure woven tightly around him, squeezing the freedom of honesty from his grasp. I could see him folding under it, the spark of rebellion dulled by the weight of expectations. "And I couldn't stand it. I am here for you, Oliver," I said fiercely, stepping away from the noise buzzing around us, wanting to pull him from the depths of uncertainty. I don't care what's going on. I just want to know how to help, but you have to let me in with resolution. I pulled him closer, searching for the answers swimming in his sorrow-filled gaze. But the doctor's voice unexpectedly cut into this fragile connect on a lifeline wrapped in urgency. We're running out of time. It's now or never. The word sent a chill through my body, and Oliver's aunt clasped his arm tighter, looking between us with a mix of protectiveness and despair. Do you understand? You can't let her get to you, Oliver. You need to focus. His face fell, an almost boyish vulnerability flashing through, but just like that, it was snuffed out. I don't know if I can, he murmured, gazing far away, lost in the flood of conflicting emotions. Suddenly, the gravity of his struggles hit me like a thunderclap. Was it just the physicality of his health at stake, or was it his spirit? What burdens did he carry? What unknowns threatened to swallow him whole? Oliver, please, I whispered, panic rising in my throat like bile. Don't push me away. Just tell me what's going on. If you can't face it, it'll help you. We'll face it together. But as the doctor beckoned for him to move toward the operating room, that flicker of hope dimmed, and I reached for him, grasping his hand tightly in mine. I love you, I blurted out, the vulnerability shattering the wall I had carefully built between hope and despair. Whatever you're going through, you don't have to do it alone. The flicker returned in his eyes, a fleeting moment of recognition that almost engulfed the darkness swirling around us. I could feel him struggle, that dreaded silence once more filling the air, wrapping us in something I couldn't name. A moment stretched painfully, and just as he opened his mouth to respond, that moment of honesty teetering on the edge, Oliver's aunt pulled him away, urgency in her voice. No time for this. We need to go. As he stepped back from me, a silent storm brewing between us, the ground beneath my feet felt unbearably unsteady. I was left clutching the fragment of hope he had almost given me, but it slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. Iron that charged instant. I saw his gaze hold mine one last time, a pleading unuttered question lingering in the space between us. Would I be there when he returned, or would this moment mark the fracture that forever separated our paths? Just like that, he disappeared behind the glass doors, and dread washed over me, a chilling uncertainty that threatened to drown out everything I believed. In the silence that followed, as I stood marooned in the whirlwind of chaos set loose in the hallway, a gnawing realization settled within me. Oliver's journey was just beginning, and mine might be a long arduous path leading to shadows I had not even begun to comprehend. The air felt thick with unspoken promises and unshed tears as I waited, the minutes stretching into an eternity. I paced the confines of the small waiting area, my heart heavy with a tumult of emotions that crashed inside me like ocean waves. Each beeping monitor echoed in my mind, a reminder of Oliver, vulnerable and alone, struggling with demons I yearned to understand, yet understood too well. Every sound in that sterile hallway accentuated his absence, a void that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. I could picture him on that gurney, being wheeled away toward the unknown, mere whispers of hope sparking in the recesses of my mind. His words echoed repeatedly, his uncertainty, his fear, the plea in his eyes. And that moment, right before they whisked him away, when our worlds collided raw and unguarded, clung to me like a lifeline. I thought of all the barriers we erected between us, of the misunderstandings that had left us splintered. This was more than an accident, this was a reckoning, both for him and me, a crossroads shaped by vulnerability that would define our very existence. But what would emerge once the storm passed? Suddenly the doors swung open, pulling me from my reverie. A doctor emerged, his expression somber yet resolute. My heart raced, the world narrowed to the singular, all-consuming question, how is he? I stepped toward him, desperation wrapping around every syllable. Is he okay? He's stable for now, the doctor replied, his voice even, but my eyes caught the subtle shift of his brow, as if holding back deeper worries. But the next few hours are critical. We need to monitor him closely. There's no telling yet how he'll respond. The weight of his words crashed over me, a fear constricted my throat. My palms went clammy as I grappled with the truth pressing against my chest. This hurdle might be the hardest yet, and Oliver was at its heart. I suddenly felt the world tilt. This illness didn't just threaten his physical self, it threatened to shatter whatever fragile connection we had fought to build. Can I see him? I managed, optimism pushing back the haze of fear. Only family is permitted in for now, he replied, glancing behind me as if gauging my resolve. but please wait in the main area. We'll update you on his status as soon as we can. Nodding numbly, I turned away, feeling lost and adrift. The waiting area seemed oppressive, the very walls constricting my breath as I sank into a nearby chair. Time trickled slowly, each tick of the clock a reminder of my helplessness. I closed my eyes, trying to catch a sliver of peace in the chaos flooding my mind. An image of Oliver, vibrant and full of life, grounding me. I needed him to fight through this, needed him to see that each moment of vulnerability was not a weakness, but a blossoming of humanity. As more time passed, I felt the familiar weight of guilt settle into my bones. I had spent so long being angry at him for his arrogance, his dismissiveness. But now, I realized that was just a mask, a defense mechanism against his own pain I was now drawn to help ease. And yet, here I sat, uncertain and unsteady, wishing I could rewind time and rewrite our history. The silence shattered when Oliver's family trickled back into the waiting room, tears flashing across their faces, fear shining in their eyes. I stood, wanting to comfort them, to share the burden of worry that loomed overhead. I approached his mother, a woman warrior wrapped in layers of grief, a blanket I wished to lift. "How is he?" I asked, choking on the uncertainty. She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "Hes frightened. Confused. Hes never had to confront his limitations before. I saw a flicker of hope in him before the surgery," I whispered earnestly. "He has strength beyond measure. We all do." But inside, I knew my words felt hollow, a desperate balm that wouldn't suffice. I searched for Oliver's siblings, already huddled together, exchanging hushed conversations fraught with worry. I couldn't find the courage to join them, and, overwhelmed, I drifted back toward my seat, eyes locked on the doorway that had taken him from me. "Sarah?" A soft voice broke through the din, and I looked up to see Layla approaching, her presence like a lighthouse cutting through the fog. I heard, "Is Oliver okay?" "I don't know." My voice quivered. "I don't know." She sat beside me, taking my hand in hers, a reminder that I was not alone. "You've got to stay strong for him," she whispered, her voice quiet yet brimming with sincerity. "You're her lifeline. Every moment you're here shows him he's not alone in this." Layla was right. I needed to pull it together, needed to be the strength he desperately needed in this storm. As those thoughts swirled in the recesses of my mind, I felt the rush of purpose ignite somewhere deep within. I would not let fear overshadow hope. I could fight alongside him, I could wear the scars of this uncertain journey like an emblem of solidarity. The hours crawled by as I grappled with swirling emotions, a tangle of love and despair caught in a relentless ebb and flow. Suddenly, the doctor returned, long strides echoing through the space. My heart raced as I darted forward, breaths hitching for answers. He began speaking, and I barely registered the words at first. "Hes awake, and his vitals are stable, but we want to keep him for observation. You can see him now." The world around me swirled in a dizzying array of brightness and warmth, oblivious to the turbulent shadows that danced on the edges. I dashed past him, my heart pounding as fear and hope intertwined, guiding me straight to Oliver. I pushed through the door and stepped into the dim room, the soft beeping of machines swirling around me as my eyes locked onto his figure. The man I had fought for, the man I had fallen for, now fragile yet resolute. He lay there, his face a mixture of pain and relief, yet that stubborn spark flickered brightly in his eyes. "Sarah," he rasped, a smile breaking through the fear etched in his features. "You came. I wouldn't be anywhere else." My voice quivered with raw emotion, but the strength flooding through me bolstered the words. "I'm right here, Oliver. You're not alone. I didn't want you to see me like this," he replied, his exhaustion edging through. "Don't." I stepped closer, and my heart raced at the vulnerability that radiated from him. "This moment doesn't define you. You're so much more than this pain. Together, we can find a way through it." The vulnerability that hung in the air grew palpable as he searched my gaze, a barrier once so insurmountable crumbling beneath the weight of our honesty. I was scared. Not just of what happened, but of what it meant. Of what could change between us if I wasn't me anymore. "Oliver?" My voice softened, reaching for the depths of his being. "You're still you. We'll face this together. Just believe me. Let me in. Let your fears out." He hesitated, uncertainty poised on the edge of his lips, but then, unexpectedly, his fingers reached for mine, intertwining with a tenderness that sent shockwaves through me. I was angry, he whispered, almost to himself. Angry that the world seemed to drag me down. Angry that the only way I knew how to fight was to hurt others. I squeezed his hand, urging him to take that leap of faith. You're here now, and you're willing to face it together. We can write a new story, one of healing instead of anger. One where you let me in. His eyes shimmered with unspoken emotion, flickering from fear to an illuminating recognition of potential. I want to try. I want to be better not just for myself, but for you too. The warmth radiating between us enveloped me like a protective cloak. In that moment, as we locked eyes, I felt the shift occurring, a deepening connection forming in the darkest corners of uncertainty. That spark I had sensed earlier illuminated the space between us, showing that our journey could be one of vulnerability and openness, where healing could indeed begin, together. Just then, in the quiet of our shared moment, I realized that the darkness of the storm wasn't the end, but a threshold, a beautiful and terrifying portal leading us toward light. I leaned in closer, letting our breaths mingle as tears of relief filled my eyes. And the truth settled around us, crushing and exhilarating. We can be the lifelines to each other. From this moment forward, we will learn how to not only survive but thrive. As he smiled gently, I felt every emotional barrier melt away, replaced with a profound understanding. Together, we could navigate through even the darkest storms, carving paths of love and resilience in the light of our unbroken spirits. In that shared breath, in that knowing exchange, I whispered, I'm right here with you, Oliver. Always. And it echoed through the depth of our souls, two hearts promising to embrace the beautiful tumult together and emerge on the other side, shaped not by the struggles that had once threatened to consume us but by the boundless hope that ignited the fire within. With that, I knew we're no longer alone, and neither would we allow the other to be lost in the shadows of uncertainty again. We would rise, through it all.